Hello, friends. I hope you are doing well in this weird time of quarantine. This is a homily based on the lectionary text this week on Exodus 16 through 17 as Israel travels from the Red Sea to Sinai. This series of stories begins in celebration. God's people have passed through the water while the Egyptians have drowned in it. A song is sung for God's power over water. At the blast of your nostrils, it screams, the waters piled up. The floods stood in a heap. The deeps congealed in the heart of the sea. Pharaoh's chariots and his host he cast into the sea, and his officers were sunk. The floods covered them. They went down into the depths like a giant stone. And the people passed by, the people whom you have redeemed. You will bring them and plant them on your own mountain. At one point, Miriam, whose name is reminiscent of the word for water in Hebrew, Miriam, picks up a tambourine and leads the women in dancing. Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea. And then they leave the water. Moses leads his people into the desert. Just as thousands of years later, Christ went from baptism to wilderness, and a time of trial descends upon Israel. And water quickly becomes the central issue. After 3 days without fresh water, Israel comes across a spring, but the water is too bitter to drink. The Lord shows Moses a log to throw into the water, and it becomes pure. They named this place Marah, or bitterness. Then they come to Elim, where there are 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. There they camp for several weeks before heading into the wilderness of Sin. There, things begin to become even more desperate. There is nothing to eat, and Israel complains. They long to return to Egypt, a place that they had just rejoiced over leaving. The Lord sends quail, and he sends bread from heaven, manna, which the scriptures say was white and tasted like wafers made with honey. And they move on. And then they come to Meribah, the place of quarreling. The place where Israel put the Lord to the test. A place where the psalmist said that God became angry with them and decided not to bring them into the promised land. A place where God said to himself, they are a people whose hearts go astray, and they do not regard my ways. And yet it does not seem at first glance that Israel is so unreasonable here. I mean, picture their situation. They're in the wilderness, a place they've never been. All they possess, they carry with them, and they are coming to a point where there is no water. They thirst. They are so thirsty that they believe that they will die. Their situation is frightening. Their worry is reasonable. Their gut-emptying anxiety, understandable. They need water. Humans need water. Nobody wants to die, particularly of thirst. Yet it's not their need that's the issue here. It's what Israel does when they have the need. In their thirst, they could have prayed for water. They could have prayed for a miracle. They could have argued with God. They could have just stolidly endured. But instead, they turned on Moses. The texts say that in their anger, Israel wanted to stone Moses and to strike him dead. If you think about it, this is a very human response to distress, but it is not a rational one. The plan makes little sense. There's nothing about killing Moses with these stones that will help. No amount of rocks thrown, no amount of wounds will give them water. All it will do is give them blood. There's no discernible path from stones to water. just from stones to blood. All this plan offers them is the type of temporary emotional satisfaction that violence offers. Although the text doesn't say this, I wonder if Adonai chose a large rock to bring water out of as an ironic comment on this anger. Israel picked up rocks out of thirst when all they could do with these rocks was kill. Only the Lord can make water come forth from a rock. It is almost as if a hungry man, angry with the world around him, goes to a store and buys an assault weapon, only to have bread come from the gun. What Israel needs is water, but what they dream about is Egypt. What they need is water, but what they feel is anger. What they need is water, but what they plan is violence. And this is why Moses' question to them at the end of the story is so shaming. Is the Lord among you or not? And this is the challenge that we as Christians should take from this text. There are times when we will be thirsty, legit thirsty. Times when our future looks bleak. Times when we wonder why we ever left the sea for the wilderness. We will experience dark nights, hungry days. We will thirst. And when we do, something will tell us the same falsehoods that derailed Israel 4,000 years ago. We will want rest. We will want food. We will want water and community. But what we will do instead is envy our past. We will want to pick up stones and start throwing them. We will want to become angry with one another. Now and then, there is something about arriving at Miranda and experiencing true desperation that tears communities and families and churches and denominations apart. But don't do it. Don't put the Lord your God to the test. Don't believe that Christ has brought us into the wilderness to die. There is no possibility that the stones you want to throw will bring you peace. Instead, know that faithfulness brings hope in the morning. Several midrashim, or these stories that fill out the biblical narratives, contain a story that puts Miriam at the center of this. They report that after Miranda, Miriam kept the stone. Perhaps this is why the next time that Israel experiences thirst is in Numbers 20, right after Miriam dies. Miriam carried with her the Mayim Haim, the living water, the endless water, which reminded Israel that the Lord was truly among them. There is a resonance here with Mary, who is named after Miriam, who bore within her the living water that refreshes our soul. Paul refers to this story in Corinthians when he speaks to a church that is unraveling, and in its unraveling is beginning to turn upon one another. He writes, I do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized with Moses in the cloud and the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them through the wilderness, and that rock was Christ. Some of them began to complain, and in doing so were destroyed by the destroyer. These things happened to them to serve as an example. They were written down to instruct us on whom the ends of the ages have come. So if you think you are standing, watch out that you do not fall. No testing has overtaken us that is not common to everyone. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tested beyond your strength. But with your testing, he will also provide the way out so that you may be able to endure it. This semester has been a time of trial for us. We've had conversations that threaten our community, a quarantine that threatens internships, that threatens our employment, that threatens endowment, a loneliness for many of us as we are shuttered inside. Stones have been thrown. The question we need to ask ourselves is the Lord among us or not?